She stoops, conquer, mistakes, night. When these words all come together in the title and subtitle of a play, one begins to wonder what's the story going to be like. It is certainly about a woman, but is it about stooping or conquering, or both? And what mistakes are going to be discovered in the darkness of the night? Stay with me till the end of this video to know everything about the storyline of Oliver Goldsmith's path-breaking comedy. She Stoops to Conquer Mistakes of a Night. This video is going to be only on the story of the play. We will be discussing the story act-wise to make things simpler for you when you start studying the text. But this is going to be a very light session when we will simply know about this delightful story penned down by Oliver Goldsmith. So, when the play begins, we see characters like Mr. Hardcastle, Mrs. Hardcastle, and their family. Who are these people? Mr. Hardcastle is a country gentleman. He is a very respectable person and he loves everything that is old-fashioned, traditional. While his wife, she loves to visit the city, she loves the new fashions and trends of the times. So Mrs. Hardcastle complains to her husband that she never gets to visit the city and enjoy city life. Now, Mrs. Hardcastle, when she got married to Mr. Hardcastle, already had a son whose name was Tony. So, Tony now stayed with his mother and stepfather. Tony Lumpkin is like a prankster who kind of wastes his time with his friends and idle gossips. Mr. Hardcastle doesn't approve of this and he wants Tony to become more mature. Mr. and Mrs. Hardcastle have a daughter whose name is Kate. She is supposed to be the she of She Stoops to Conquer. Now, Kate has a very weird deal with her father. Kate loves to dress in fashionable clothes, following city trends, but her father doesn't like that. So, they have struck a deal that Kate would dress as she wishes in whatever way she wants during the day, but in the evenings she would dress in a humble way, just like his father wants her to, wearing traditional dress, wearing simple garments. Alright? Now in the very first act we get to know that Mr. Hardcastle's friend, Mr. Charles, wants to get his son married to Kate. And because of that, he has decided to send his son Marlowe to pay a visit to the Hardcastle place. And Mr. Hardcastle tells his daughter that, well, I want you to meet this person and get married to him. And Kate wants to make a good impression on Marlowe because, well, in those days, the only career option left for women, respectable women, was not much other than getting married to a respectable person. So after her father leaves her alone, she thinks about the whole thing and then talks about it with her cousin Constance. Now Constance informs Kate that Marlowe is actually a friend of Hastings, who is somebody she wants to get married to. So she becomes an informant to Kate and gives her some tips about Marlowe. She says that Marlowe is very good, fine, but there's a problem with this guy. He is extremely shy when he faces a respectable woman, a woman who belongs to high society. But when he is among people belonging to more humble ways of life, women from comparatively lower strata of society, he is not shy at all and he is very comfortable. So he has what we can say social anxiety when it comes to women belonging to the same class as himself. Now, while this main storyline is developing, we also have a parallel storyline, the storyline of Constance. So, Mrs. Hardcastle wants Constance to get married to her son Tony. Why? Because in that case, the family jewelry which belongs to Constance will stay in the family. Otherwise, when she'll get married to somebody else, she will take away her jewelry and, well, they will be gone from the household. So, Mrs. Hardcastle wants to hold on to these jewels which she feels would be rightfully here with her only if Constance marries her son. Constance is least interested to marry Tony, and trust me, Tony also doesn't like the idea at all. Now, as the act first gets to a close, we see that Tony is having a good drink with his friends in the bar and he encounters two gentlemen who come there inquiring about Mr. Hardcastle's house. We understand that these two gentlemen are no other than Marlowe and his friend Hastings, and they want to go to Mr. Hardcastle's house. But Tony has a plan. He plans to trick them bad, and he directs them to Mr. Hardcastle's house but does not say that this is the house of Mr. Hardcastle. He says that you people have lost your way and I can show you a proper inn or a hotel where you can stay overnight. And he directs them to Mr. Hardcastle's house. So when they arrive there in the next act, they think that this is a hotel or an inn, whereas Mr. Hardcastle thinks that this is Marlowe, my friend's son, which is right. So here the confusion begins. So in the second act, we see Mr. Hardcastle trying to train his servants to welcome his friend's son when he would arrive. His servants, they belong to the country, the village, so they don't know about these city etiquettes, these various hospitality strategies and techniques. And Mr. Hardcastle is equally ignorant, but he still tries to make them appear sophisticated so that he doesn't have to lose his face in front of his friend's son. At this moment, Marlowe and Hastings enter, but they think this is a hotel. Mr. Hardcastle welcomes Marlowe, but he is really shocked by the bluntness and the rudeness with which Marlowe starts talking to him. Now, Marlowe thinks that this is the innkeeper. Okay, so I should have a professional relationship with him. I should ask about the amenities in the hotel. I should ask about what kind of bed they are providing, what kind of wine they are providing. And imagine the situation where a prospective father-in-law is seeing that his going to be son-in-law is asking about these things, because Mr. Hardcastle doesn't know that Marlowe is basically tricked by Tony. Now, when Constance gets to know about the thing, she understands that Tony has played a trick on Marlowe. She informs Hastings, but they decide to keep Marlowe in the dark because otherwise he would be so embarrassed. So they are pretty unsure how to deal with the situation, and the mistakes continue. Now, while this is happening, Marlowe comes face to face with Kate, who is dressed as a fashionable woman, because this is that time of the day. During the course of all this, Marlowe gets to meet Kate, but Kate, because she is officially meeting her would-be fiancé, so she is dressed up in fashionable clothes, and of course Marlowe is not able to have any conversation with her because he has social anxiety with high-class women, and Kate is dressed as a high-class woman. And therefore, he leaves without any fruitful conversation. And Kate is very intrigued, and she thinks that, okay, if this person was a little less shy, then maybe we could work things out, because she didn't hate him when she first saw him. Now, Along with this, we have the other story continuing. Constance in love with Hastings, and when Tony comes to know about it, he actually wants to help the two of them elope or run away from this place. So we realize that Tony might be a prankster, but he is also a very good spirited person. He really wants to help his cousin Constance. By the beginning of the third act, Hardcastle and Kate have formed completely different ideas or conceptions about Marlowe. Hardcastle thinks that Marlowe is a very rude, blunt, insensitive person, whereas Kate thinks he's a shy, introvert, and soft spoken person. So their impressions are so different from each other that they are really confused that who is right and who is wrong. In this act, we see the subplot developing even faster. You remember the jewelry about which I was talking in the beginning? The jewelry that belonged to Constance. Now, Tony, he stole the box of jewelry from his mother's drawer and he gave it to Hastings. Constance, when she goes to her aunt, asking her to give her the jewelry so that she can just try them on, Mrs. Hardcastle doesn't want to give her. She is reluctant to give her those jewelry. And then, when she discovers that the box is missing, she becomes almost violent and almost in a fit of rage. But Constance is not worried because Tony had already told her about his plans and the fact that the jewelry was safe with Hastings. Now, while this was happening, it was evening and Kate was wearing a very simple dress and she pretends to be a maid. And when Marlowe sees Kate almost wearing the dress of a maid, he starts speaking to her in a very robust manner, in a very brave manner. He actually did not look at Kate's face in the morning because she was wearing those, sophisticated garments. Therefore, he did not recognize that this is the same girl because he didn't see the face of Kate Hardcastle. So when he sees this maid, he thinks that she is a barmaid and he becomes very flirtatious. Then Kate understands that, okay, this man has this weird problem. Their flirtatious conversation is interrupted by the entry of Mr. Hardcastle, who is a conservative person. So he sees everything and he is not happy about the way in which Marlowe speaks to his daughter. Kate convinces her father to let her reveal the real character of Marlowe, to show him that no, Marlowe is not a spoiled brat and he has good elements and he is worth his daughter's hand. And Hardcastle, in a grudging way, he says, fine, you can do what you want to prove what you're trying to prove, but I am not convinced at this moment. Now, in the next act, we get to know that Marlowe's father, Charles, is about to arrive. Hearing that, Hastings and Constance, they think that they should run away immediately to avoid being stuck in this whole affair. Now, Hastings had that box of jewelry which he got from Tony. He thought that I should keep this for safekeeping for some time with Marlowe, and he goes and gives that to Marlowe. Now, Marlowe still thinks that he is in a hotel. And he goes to Mrs. Hardcastle thinking that she is the mistress of the hotel and she would be able to keep everything in a very safe place. So she goes to Mrs. Hardcastle with that box of jewelry and hands them over to her, saying that please keep this in your locker. I will take it once I leave. So imagine Mrs. Hardcastle's shock when she sees her stolen box of jewelry returning to her in that weird way. Now, this is also the time when Marlowe realizes that he is in Mr. Hardcastle's house and this is the friend of his father. He is horrified. But does that mean Kate's identity is revealed to him yet? No. Kate continues to act as if she is not Kate Hardcastle, but this time she says that she is a poor relation of the Hardcastle family, and that makes Marlowe continue to have his level of comfort with her. While Kate is really upset about the fact that Marlowe might leave the place, because Marlowe is very scared now that his father is going to arrive, and God knows what would happen if he came to know that his son has behaved like this with his friend. So he wants to leave the place, and Kate is not happy about it. And this whole thing touches his heart that, okay, this girl is weeping for me, this girl really likes me. Now, while this is happening, Constance, Hastings, they plan their elopement, but the whole thing is revealed to Mrs. Hardcastle because of a letter that was written. So she wants to stop them. We will see how Tony will save the situation by driving his mother crazy one more time. In Act 5, we see Hardcastle and his friend laughing about Marlowe's mistakes. Hardcastle feels that Kate and Marlowe have interacted well and they would really get married to each other. But when they ask Marlowe, he says, I'm really sorry about my mistakes. I'm sorry about my rudeness, but I cannot marry your daughter. Why? Of course, he was never in love with Kate Hardcastle. He could never even speak to her. She scared him. He was in love with that lowly, humble maid with whom he flirted. We know that Kate Hardcastle was the one who acted that part, but she acted it so well that Marlowe was deceived. And he said, I will not marry the daughter of Mr. Hardcastle. No one believes him because Hardcastle has seen him flirting with Kate. Marlowe leaves. Kate comes and tells them that, give me half an hour, I'll prove that he will definitely marry me. So we see that when Kate and Marlowe are together, she manages to let Marlowe know about the whole situation, and he realizes that Kate's stooping to that level of a maid has helped him realize that it doesn't matter whether somebody belongs to a sophisticated high-class society or a humble background. When he is in love, he is in love. And Marlowe this time has no problem in realizing or accepting the fact that he is going to get married to a high-born person. What happens to the story of Constance and Hastings? Tony had tricked Mrs. Hardcastle so that when she was trying to take Constance away from the place, she was actually moving around in their own garden. Eventually, when Hastings and Constance have a chance to run away, Constance doesn't want to do that. She wants to talk to her uncle, Mr. Hardcastle. So they return, and when everyone asks Tony whether he wants to get married to Constance or not, he says that he's 21 years old and he doesn't want to be told whom to marry. Hardcastle's friend, senior Mr. Charles, he says that I know this Hastings fellow, he is my son's friend and I can vouch for him. And because of that, Constance and Hastings eventually get engaged without any more trouble. So this whole story that comprises mistakes of a night, mistake that Hardcastle makes about Marlowe, mistakes that Tony's mother makes about Tony and Constance. And there are so many more mistakes which we will soon discover in the upcoming classes. In the next video, we will talk about the background, about anti-sentimental comedy, to which genre this play belongs. We will know a little bit about Oliver Goldsmith's life, why he wrote this play, the context, and history of its publication and production, how he managed to put this play on stage. That was really a very hard thing to do. I'll tell you why in the next video, trust me. For now, remember the names of the characters: Mr. and Mrs. Hardcastle, his friend Charles, Charles's son Marlowe, his friend Hastings, Hastings' girlfriend Constance, Neville Constance, her name is Neville. So in some books you will have the name Neville, in some books you will have the name Constance, so both are same. And she is the niece of the Hardcastles. And we see Kate, that is Mr. and Mrs. Hardcastle's daughter. We see Tony, who is the stepson of Mr. Hardcastle and a real son of Mrs. Hardcastle. And we see how these characters interact with each other to create this very crispy, witty story staged at a time when this type of comedy was unthinkable. Why? What is wrong with this? We'll find that out in our next video. So till we meet next time, don't forget to stay subscribed and turn on that notification icon. Until we meet again, this is Monami Mukherjee signing off. Bye-bye.